All right, so what are the pros and cons when we speak about or advantages or disadvantages of a FAR 8.4? We're speaking about predominantly a large savings of time. You don't have to synopsize. That's going to save you 10 to 15 days at a minimum. And because if you're going under full and open competition, the rule of SECA with a FAR 15, your solicitation has to be public at least 30 days. And that 30 days, you wouldn't want your 30th day to be a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday. So it could be longer. In the world of GSA with the schedules program, if you're utilizing GSA eBuy as your electronic RFQ methodology, you could post a requirement for as short as 48 hours or as long as 60 days. 48 hours is an extremely short period of time, and you would certainly want to be certain that your contractors on schedule that are receiving that RFQ have been notified that it's coming and so forth. But all the same, the rule of SECA for 30 days synopsis time does not apply to schedules. So you can shorten your synopsis time to something more manageable, say 5 days or 10 days or something of that nature, and save a considerable amount of time there. All right, when you look at the pricing under 8.4, there have been surveys upon surveys, and I've heard people say that they can buy things cheaper than they can get them off a GSA schedule, and that may very well be true. But, if you really do some analysis, we have got some surveys that would demonstrate to you that the prices that are offered under schedule are already discounted. And the concept is that the contractors understand that they are making their product or services available to the entire federal government through the schedules program, and they are willing to have discounts. And then again, if it's above the simplified acquisition threshold, we're required to ask for additional discounts, which in my experience has been received favorably among contractors. All right. Fair and reasonable prices are negotiated. They've already been negotiated. Terms and conditions are already in place. And as we stated before, you can utilize some agency-specific terms and conditions as long as they don't conflict with the GSA terms and conditions. All right. And then again, I will mention that you will get, if you order from any business that falls in any of the social economic programs, that your agency would receive credit towards your agency's goals for those dollars spent through the program. It's a very flexible program. You can have team arrangements. You can issue BPAs and so forth. So there's a lot of advantage there, if you will, when it comes to the schedules program. All right, some features about the GSA Schedules program is really what we refer to as our e-tools. And if you are familiar with them and have used them, you probably agree with me when I say that they do expedite the processes. All three of the e-tools, GSA Advantage, GSA eBuy, and GSA eLibrary, have tutorials when you look at the websites to kind of work yourself through them. Or if you're a federal agency and you would desire to have some training, there is a customer service director network that would be willing to give training at your facility on how to use them. There's no expense to that, and if you need to know who your customer service director is, if you drop us an email, we'll certainly let you know who they are depending upon your physical location. But GSA Advantage is particularly useful for purchase of commercial supplies and well-defined services. The general descriptions on the left side of the page link to descriptions of the applicable schedules is there on the home page. And then eBuy is a component of GSA Advantage, and it is an electronic request for quote methodology, and it allows for you to post your RFQ online. You are posting it to only GSA schedule holders under the particular schedule that you desire to utilize. You can go in and physically check those contractors that you desire to receive the solicitation, or if you desire, you can have it sent to all of those schedule holders. Now, you may not want to do that in regards to some of the schedule holders have several hundred to several thousand contractors on there, and our experience has been that that most agencies receive an average of 3.3 to 4 quotes when they go in and post a requirement. So there's not a fear of being just bombarded with a lot of different quotes in that regard. But with GSA eBuy, you're going to end up with electronic notifications of the status of your requirement while it is in a status of post. You'll get email notice about the number of quotes that have been received to date. You have the capability of actually looking at them. Let's say, for example, that you issued a solicitation through eBuy and you were not getting any quotes. You would get a notification that, hey, nobody's giving you any interest here. Maybe you need to reevaluate your statement of work or something of that nature. At the conclusion of your requirement under GSA eBuy, you will get a document, an electronic document that will show all of the contractors that were solicited and those that responded and those that didn't. And for those that did respond, you'll have, if you will, a spreadsheet that will give their quotes to you all in one document. And those documents are actually kept in GSA archives for up to 7 years, so you can go back and see them again. You have the capability in eBuy to literally make the award if you so desire, or you can pull it offline and use your agency procedures for issuing the award. And GSA eBuy will also send out the notice to the unsuccessful offerors on your behalf for you if you give it instruction to do so. All right, and then GSA eLibrary. This is a really, really good tool for contractors and for the government agencies attempting to find the appropriate schedule that meets their need. As an agency that's looking to find the appropriate schedule, if you go into GSA eLibrary, it acts as a search engine. You're able to put in nomenclature relevant to your requirement, and then it's going to show you the appropriate schedules and then break down that schedule into the special item number or SINs that is relevant to that schedule, and you can see exactly where your which contractors are on that schedule, and you could also give you some information relevant to the description of what those contractors have contracted for on behalf of GSA. In talking and speaking at some small business fairs, contractors frequently ask me about how do I know what schedule I need to look at for my business, and I take them or I instruct them to go to eLibrary and to put in the nomenclature that best describes their business, or to put in several of their strongest competitors and then see what schedules come up. And then they can link from those particular schedules to the FedBizOps open announcement regarding those solicitations and download them and complete them and submit them for consideration, if you will, to becoming a GSA schedule holder. Some advantages of FAR 15 is that you have the flexibility to conduct negotiations, all right, and you may have that competitive range determinations if you see fit. You have flexibility in terms and conditions as well. If discussions may be required or you need to review proposals in phases rather than simple capability statements, to conduct a down selection, a FAR 15 may be a better choice. And again, I will say this about a FAR 15 buy. You do have a wider range of contract types that are described in FAR 16, which would include, obviously, cost reimbursement type contracts as well. All right, then that brings us to a slide that speaks about some restrictions on FAR Subpart 8. I spoke earlier that 8.4 procedures have a firm fixed price or a fixed price EPA or a time and material or labor hour. And so and also another element here is that your requirement needs to be fit into the scope of that particular multiple award schedule, so very minimal modification is allowed. And then Obviously, you've got to stay within the terms and conditions of the contract that GSA has established with the contractors. All right, some disadvantage of a FAR 15 from my perspective, they take too much time. All right, and we speak about them being resource intensive because many times there's a whole evaluation team that's required with many functional specialists, and sometimes they need to be dedicated to a source selection for months at a time. And so, and negotiations are an art that is really learned on the job. A good practice is to have a negotiation team led by an experienced contracting officer with junior personnel in attendance as a learning experience. And if an office is not adequately staffed, this really could pose a problem. All right, I've got some web resources for you here, and as David pointed out when we started our presentation today, the presentation is downloadable. It's a PDF file, so you can get these. You don't have to be scribbling right now as they're posted up on the screen. But there is certainly the schedules. Website is the very first one, and eLibrary and Advantage and eBuy, and then there is the acquisition regulations and